Guru Radhe Radhe Guru Radhe Guru. Hello and welcome. In this episode, Swami Lalitananda shares precious stories of her time with Swami Radha. We speak about devotion and how work as an offering can help cultivate finer feelings of love. Hello, Swami Lalitananda. Welcome.
Thank you, Katie.
It's so wonderful to be here with you today, especially because this whole idea of doing interviews and asking teachers and students of Swami Radha's these sort of questions all started from our conversation back in the summer of 2021 or 2022, when I had the privilege of interviewing you in the Temple of Light for the audiobook that was coming out. So it feels like a full circle to now be here with you today.
Mm-hmm. At a further distance, but somehow we still feel close.
Yes, the power of technology and also the power of, I think, the teachings too, to create that connection and maintain it too.
Uh-huh.
Wonderful. So we'll start. I wanted to first have you speak a little bit about kind of your role at the ashram, who you are. And for those listening, Swami Lalitananda is right now at Yasodhara Ashram, while I'm a couple provinces away in Quebec. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your position at the ashram.
Well, I'm a resident at the ashram, and I've been here for decades. I have a history with Swami Radha and Swami Radhananda, having learned from them. And Swami Radhananda passed on the presidency of the ashram to me in 2014. So I'm a Swami, which means I'm a renunciate. And as one of the long-term residents, I think our main work is caring for the ashram, listening to what the ashram needs, and keeping everything current and vibrant and connected to the essential part of the teachings.
Wow. What a responsibility. How does it feel to carry all of that?
Well, it feels like an amazing privilege, actually. I'll be talking about my time with Swami Radha, but it's like the ashram is her legacy. And so caring for the ashram is like caring for her. So even though it's a responsibility, I feel like as a group, we hold it together. Together, we hold the ashram. And people coming in just seem to, there's so much that's imbued here already, so much in the air, in the land, in the buildings, through the 60 years of being here, that our responsibility is definitely light. You know, it's really about holding the light. So it's not a heavy one. It's a joy and a pleasure.
Wow, that's amazing. Yes. And you already spoke a little bit briefly about this, but being with others too, other swamis and other residents who are kind of committed to this work also, I'm sure that provides a lot of support and that sense of community.
Definitely. We're all in it together. And inviting more people in, by the way.
Amazing. So what is your connection to Swami Radha? How did your relationship with her develop over the years? And for folks listening, there is kind of the more introduction to Swami Lalitananda's relationship with Swami Radha in the interview that we had, the video from the summer. So now kind of picking up from there, how did your relationship with her develop over the years?
Well, I met her teachings before I met her, so I knew that there was something that attracted me. And after meeting her, that was confirmed that she was a very special person to me, that she carried something of a quality that invited me to become like her. And in one of the first workshops, I've been reviewing some of my diaries. It was on the mountain pose. And she talked at length like she did. And she talked that some people are special and kind of rise up above the plains like a mountain. And I thought, yeah, she is that person. I want to be like her. That's what I thought. And she asked me, I said, yeah, I want to be like you. And I said, I want to have that intense love that you have for the divine. And she said, well, I just want to make sure that you have that love is for the divine and not for like a man. And I said, yeah, like I'm really I'm really committed. That's what I want. And she said, okay, well, I'll support you in that. I'll be behind you and just ask everyone to pray for you because that's a hard thing to do. So she kept encouraging me and drawing me close. And I just kept going to workshops where she came to our city, Lethbridge, or she would come to Calgary and we would drive up and see her there. She said she always challenged me, especially in those early years. She would challenge my ego and my sensitivity and my self-pity, all of those things that I wanted to be challenged on because I wanted to be a freer person. So she helped me come out of my shell, really, and be courageous. And I just kept meeting her and going to the ashram and eventually took the 3-month course. And after that course, she came into our dream group and she kept working with me. That's all I can say. Like very personally, very encouraging and kind of ego shattering because I think the yoga training is really about that. If you want to become free, you have to be willing to let some stuff go. Like old self-images, old habits of limitation, like thinking I couldn't do stuff. And so, yeah, she always encouraged me to enter the unknown and take the next step and be brave. And she would just let me go. Like, go try this and then see what happens.
Wow. So it really sounds like there was kind of that you were both meeting each other with you showing your commitment to her and then her kind of acknowledging that and then so supporting you through her teachings and through her presence.
Yeah, so she kept calling me close. And the challenge at that point was to finish my Bachelor's of Art degree, which I had started. And I just didn't think it was that great. But it wasn't a matter of it being great. It was a matter of me completing something and showing a commitment to something. And then at one point, I went up to do a straight walk in Calgary with her, which is kind of a decision-making process. And she really encouraged me to take the next step and go off and get my master's degree. She said, why not? You can't really do much with the BA. You just go and do that. And so I ended up moving to Toronto and living at a center there. And she would come and visit and give workshops. And then she started, instead of challenging me, she started like saying that I was doing really well. And that really made me nervous because I wasn't used to it. And I thought, oh no, what if I stop doing well? Then what's going to happen? But I just have to say she was there for me every step of the way and just helped me out. And eventually I worked and made money to pay off my debt. And then she called me closer and I became her editor and personal assistant. So it was a process over many years, actually.
Mm-hmm. How long would you say? Like about 10 or 20 years? 10 years?
Well, I met her in 1980 and I was her personal assistant when I came back from Los Angeles in 1988, 89. So yeah, that was 9 years. And then I was with her for the last 88 till she died in 1995 for the last 7 years of her life. So very close.
Sounds like kind of what I thought about is you speaking about, being 28 and kind of trying to figure out your life and finishing those sort of commitments and her support and how that kind of changed. And you then became a support for her through being her assistant. What was that relationship like? And in what ways did she continue to support you while allowing you to kind of support her in all the ways that you had to?
Definitely. It was a two-way street. And I think I got the benefits for sure. So she supported me by mentoring me, really. And her way of mentoring was, for example, she would be having a counseling session with someone and she would invite me in. So I would be sitting at the chair. I just remember the first time that happened. It's like, this is so awkward because this intimate relationship was happening. She was quite straightforward in how she would tell people, give them ideas about what they should be doing. And I was a witness to it. So I got to be present for her personal work with other people, which was a great honor. And then working with her books and working with editing and putting together manuscripts was just such a privilege. So toward the end of her life, she was working on the book Light and Vibration, and she was very inspired. So often I would be with her recording her talks and being present as she was trying to put these really difficult, esoteric, ethereal thoughts into words. And so it was like I was in the company of this really fine transmission, is what it seemed like, because she was coming toward the end of her life and she was moving to such a subtle realm and trying to express the way to get there through her words. And so I was a witness to that. And then I would transcribe the tapes at the time. And then eventually I put it together into a manuscript. But being present with her was such a gift.
Is there a particular moment or memory that you kind of remember from that time, particularly as you were stepping into this role of being her assistant and throughout kind of the last years of her life on this plane?
Well, one of the early ones was the part about becoming her assistant, because I just finished my master's degree in Toronto. And then I went to visit her. She was living in Victoria at the Radha Center. And I hadn't actually spent like day after day with her until that time. And it was such a pleasure for me. So I was there. I was doing karma yoga during the day at this house, washing the windows, painting the walls, sanding the windowsills, oiling them. I just remember all of those jobs because they were such a heart offering because she was there. And every day I would remember my dreams, and she would invite me to sit on her swing in the sunroom, and she would work with me on my dream, on my current dream. So I would have done some work and I would say my part, and then she would offer her part. And she was always so positive. So I would come up with these interpretations, and she would just say, yeah, don't go through all this, the method that she'd created and had helped me so much. Just like, what's your intuition about this? And then she would say hers, like, oh, that seems really like your dad is there, your sister is there. Yeah, everyone is supporting you on your path. So that was a really special time. And after spending maybe 3 or 4 weeks there with her, I just felt that we had come to an agreement. Even though nobody, neither she nor I, had said it, I had this secret desire to be her person, to be her personal assistant or whatever that was, her mentee. And I felt like she and I made a contract that when I was done paying for my student loans, that I would be with her. Even though we hadn't said it, I knew that it was going to happen. So that was kind of a magic moment. And of course, it did happen. So those intuitive connections, they were really meaningful to me. And it showed that communication happens on more than a person-to-person physical level.
And so I think now is a nice time to kind of bring in this theme that we're thinking about and talking about today, and that of devotion. So it already sounds like you, from a very early point of meeting Swami Radha, you knew that there was a certain commitment that you wanted to make to her and to the teachings. And so when I think about commitment, I often think about devotion and being devoted to something. And so in thinking about this, I was kind of going through Swami Radha's books last night, and Time to Be Holy seems to always have the perfect quote for any topic that I have in mind. So here Swami Radha writes on devotion. She says, faith can be cultivated and increased by practicing devotion, because devotion gives purification. Devotion is a selfless act. It cultivates the emotions towards sincerity, true giving, and selflessness.
That's a beautiful quote, Katie.
It's a good one.
Thank you for finding that.
Yeah, I thought we could kind of invite her words in so that then I can ask you, what is devotion?
From my point of view, the very simplest definition is love and dedication, at least devotion on the spiritual path. That's what it is to me. It really is dedicating energy towards something. So people can be devoted to their dog or to their art or to their scholarship. It means you're going to give time to it. You're going to put energy toward it. So it can be more neutral, but I think on the spiritual path, it's always more of flowering of heart. It's a tender place. It's not about discipline or intellectual understanding. You just love somebody, and so you want to do whatever you can to support them and give yourself to them or to the teachings or to the divine. That's what devotion is to me, is very much connected to love and to the heart. And it's a full kind of feeling. It's not a strain. It's like giving of a fullness because you feel like you've received so much and you feel grateful and you want to give in whatever way you can.
So a certain process of giving and that heart connection to something perhaps greater than oneself, like the divine or like you said, the teachings or a guru. Do you think for you in your relationship with Swami Radha, was the kind of devotion that you developed a reflection of the devotion that you saw in her?
Yes. I mean, I had never seen anyone who was devoted to the divine before. And, she was amazing because those are the words that she would speak. It was like the divine was always on her mind, or sometimes she would say, yeah, the little blue guy is just over my shoulder there. I only talk when he speaks. So she was very dedicated to her path. That was her reason for living. She had so much passion that she would travel to India when she knew nothing about what was going to happen, and then to come back as a Swami and create an ashram and inspire other people. Like, it just took so much. So she was a great example of a devoted person. And she was very devoted to her teacher, Swami Shivananda. I would often tell stories about him.
So once you kind of began having a more intimate relationship with her, particularly when you were assisting her, what role did devotion have in your relationship with her during those times?
I remember one time I was practicing the Divine Mother mantra, which was like, may everything I do be taken as your worship. So that's like taking life and offering back to life itself, this idea of Divine Mother. And I just made everything I did because I was serving Swami Radha. So I would repeat one line of the mantra every day, and maybe like for a week or something, and really focus on speech being mantra. So whenever I was around her, I would just keep the mantra going. And then all actions of my hands. And I remember during the all actions of my hands, be mudra, she kept giving me things to sew and things to stitch. And so as I was stitching, I would say, may all actions of my hands be mudra. And then I'd be creating something for her. So it was really special. It was like stitching devotion into what I was creating. And then they all eating and drinking. And I remember she had very simple food, but I presented, like, she had oatmeal, for example, and I just put it in such a beautiful little bowl and her cream in a beautiful container. And then I carried it in at my heart. And I had a tiny spoon for the sugar. And I could tell she recognized that I was doing something. And that evening on my altar, I found a little piece of chocolate. And I thought, she received it and she gave something back. So that's the way, whenever I gave anything to her, I would always receive something more back. And so when I felt devotional towards her, when I kind of recognize the divine in her through repeating the mantra or just being aware in her presence of the divine, then I would see it more. And then something would happen where I would receive that divine blessing back. So it was more than reciprocating. It was, she always gave more. And I think that's what she said with the divine. Like, you give the divine something and they give you so much more back.
That is just breathtaking. I don't even know how to respond to all of that. That is so beautiful. And it's so clear how deep the heart connection between you and her and the teachings and that sense of devotion and like what she writes about here, the faith that can be cultivated. And it sounds like her kind of giving back reflected how that faith was cultivated within you to trust that the divine would meet you again and again.
Right. Yes. And those were the lovely times. And then there were the challenging times as well. And that too is part of the path, right? Like what I said at the beginning, the training to burst through the ego. And I asked her once, like, how can you, like, you have that much awareness. How is it you're willing to accept sort of the garbage part of people, the difficult parts? And she said, I only do it if I see the glow underneath. So she's getting to that underneath part that we all have. But she needed to be able to at least see that it was there before she would enter into that, because it takes a lot. It takes a lot to be willing to break down the barriers of someone's armors and defenses that they built up over a lifetime to protect the heart, really. So we all have that inner light, but how do we get to it?
Mm-hmm. How accessible is it to be seen? Well, and I know for myself, devotion has been such a big theme of the teachings that I've received through Yasodhara Ashram and through Swami Radha. And I'm curious how, in your eyes, devotion is kind of interwoven into the teachings. In what ways and in what forms?
Well, one of the things that you brought up in the quote was the selfless service part. And because this ashram is based on karma yoga, everyone who comes here gets to offer service. And anytime it gets close to being selfless, like an offering from the heart, that becomes devotional. And it's such a brilliant teaching, because once you leave the ashram, you have that option to make your work devotional, to make it an offering, rather than, say, an ego-based, oh, look how great I am, I did this wonderful thing. It's like you get to offer it. And that creates a freedom from having your self-image built on your accomplishments, but rather keeping on offering so that you can keep being filled in your heart. And the other thing is, we're very devotional here. I mean, we have a temple of light that's just meant for devotion. And every evening we have satsang in that temple, which I'm looking at from here. And we chant and we read inspiring verses. And we are all together in that feeling of supporting other people who are on the prayer list, sending out that devotion to help others. And all of the classes we do, we start with a practice, a spiritual practice of chanting or repetition of a prayer or invoking the light, which is like a beautiful image of the divine, a subtle image of the divine. Divine Mother, we love the land because Divine Mother is the land. Whenever I think of the land, I think, well, we're honored to be on this land, which has been here for millennia and has been the land of the Tanaha people and the Sinayaks people. And so for 60 years, the ashram has been here. But in terms of time, is a tiny amount. And we do our best to just keep the land flourishing and wild and use the cultivated parts to support ourselves. Loving the land is part of it, part of devotion.
And I'm here at McGill University today, which is on unceded territory and land that has long served the cultural practices and livelihoods of the Haudenosaunee and other Indigenous communities around what we now call Quebec and Montreal. For my own self, coming into the ashram and realizing what a distinct focus that you, as the spiritual director of the ashram and other community members, were putting on kind of acknowledging where we were and kind of the colonial histories that are tied to that, and also seeing how the community is really moving towards working with the Indigenous communities. For me, that was like such a huge gold star and a really green flag of really understanding that, okay, yeah, this place exists. And it also acknowledges kind of what that entails and what is required in moving forward in relation to the communities that are involved, like the Sinaiaks and the Ktunaxa.
Mm-hmm. One lovely thing that's just happened is that the cultural ambassador of the Sinaiaks people is taking a dream course online with us. So she really acknowledged that the ashram is a healing place and supports that. So that really gave me pleasure to know that she supported our work. And definitely we want to support her work and the Ktunaxa as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing to kind of see all those worlds coming together. And that's always something that I've really appreciated about the ashram is this quality of, connecting with the divine and being in this realm that might feel a little bit more like quote unquote airy, but then at the same time, it's very practical. The teachings are practical. And also there's that kind of awareness around the things that are happening in the world that we need to kind of have knowledge about and be aware of.
I feel probably that was always there, but it feels even more important now with climate crisis and all of these inequities being so exposed. What is our part? How do we help? How do we heal? How do we ourselves become more aware so that we're inviting diversity in a real way? So yeah, it's part of what I feel is important and the bridging that needs to happen. I felt like when we built the new temple, which really came into existence just a few years ago, that its outlook was inner and outer, and that we have to be inward and aware of the outer world and take action as best we can.
Yeah, that quality of action seems very important, especially when reflecting too on kind of the ashram being a space of karma yoga, being based in that, and selfless service, and then coming back to kind of that theme of devotion. I can't help but kind of take the conversation in this way. And I, before we didn't really talk about this, but one of my favorite books from Timeless Books, the publications, is Glimpses of a Mystical Affair, which you wrote, I guess, in the late 90s, I believe. Can you say a little bit about that book and how devotion is part of it? I mean, any chance I get, I try to ask you about this book and the process of writing it, because it is really such an amazing story.
Well, actually, I wrote it when Swami Radha was alive. So it was really during the last year of her life. And she was quite ill, and she had a number of people with her helping. And one of the things that I would do, she always wanted a book on Radha Krishna. And so I was studying all her writings, what she had done about it, going back in the files, looking through it. And then this one day I was sitting in her bedroom as she was resting. And I just started writing down all my questions, like her name is Radha. And she so relates to the Radha of the myth of Radha and Krishna. And she seems to understand who Krishna is, like she seemed to know before she knew. And so who is she? and who is Krishna? And who am I? And so I wrote down all these questions as I was sitting there. And then when we were having our little interaction over her desk, I just asked her these questions. And she said, well, I can't answer those questions. Just use the questions as a start of some writing. And so So the inquiry, the kind of wonder, like what's really going on in this woman's life? Who is she? What is happening? What is spiritual life? What does it mean that Radha meets Krishna? And who is this gopi who's like there helping them get together? And so I interwove my life with her in that last year, like from real incidents of being with her and the story of Radha and Krishna and their meetings and their growing together, the separation, what the gopis saw. And it was just kind of a flow, really, because it was what I was living at that time. And the one part that really stood out to me was the separation piece, because I had a time when I became separated from Swami Radha. So here we were in this intimate relationship, me loving her deeply. And she was experiencing a lot of pain, and I had just overcome an illness, and I had less resources to draw on. And I was kind of on duty all the time. And the part of me that was very human, it's like, I can't do this. Like, I just became very emotional. And she started to feel that and kind of sent me away. And then I had this feeling of being like Radha separated from Krishna. It's like, this is so painful. What can I do to make up for it? How can I get back? And I did the thing that Radha did too. It's like you do sadhana, you do practice. It's like you have to purify yourself to get back to that connection. And so eventually, yeah, she called me back, and that was the final months of her life. When I was, it was a joyful time. It was like a healing time and a joyful time, and it was kind of a no holds barred sort of time. It's like, I'm really here for you. I am here. I am wholehearted. I am for the teachings. No doubt. But during the time of separation, I also learned that I would be with her even if she wasn't physical. And I think it was part of my learning to be able to let her go when she passed away later that year.
Mm-hmm. And that was kind of what I actually wanted to ask next, hearing you talk about that separation piece, but then also reflecting on Radha and how even when Krishna's not there, there's this slight knowing that he's going to come back.
Yeah.
Was that then apparent for you upon her passing?
Well, it was kind of it was really sad. And at the same time, it's like she was freed of her form. So she became bigger, more ethereal, yes, but sort of more present. It felt like for more people, not just for me. And then because she had done so much work during her lifetime, she had manifested all of these books and videos and tapes and the ashram itself and the teachings and the teachers and the method of teaching, that we were given so much plenty, so much fullness. She was gone and she wasn't gone. And she's still there. Yeah, and I do connect with her through my practices. And, it's harder because she's not like that person that I can bring a cup of tea to. It's like I can bring my mantra practice to and ask for help and be encouraged by, just because she wants someone here to hold the precious gift of the ashram.
Mm. And here you are doing just that.
Yes, me and many others. We are holding it. Our privilege and our honor and our pleasure and our selfless service, as much as we can make it so. We all still have egos. We all still need work as long as we're in bodies.
How do you think devotion can kind of continue to help others, both within the ashram, but then in the greater kind of scale outside of the ashram, in the outside world? You already spoke a little bit about kind of creating work and offering it. Who should we offer our work to?
That is such a good question. That could be your question.
See, now I feel like I'm just getting into these questions that I've just wanted to personally ask you.
Well, what is it that's beyond our ego or beyond our small self? However you imagine that, can you offer it? I mean, some people have images of the divine, or they have a religion that makes sense to them, that whatever that God part is, they can offer to that. Other people, it might just be a sense of offering to their best self or their higher self or the greater good or the service of humanity, but something beyond personal satisfaction, I guess, something that feels elevating, that's not limited.
And that heart coming through, that heartfelt connection to something perhaps other than ourselves.
Yeah, if you've ever loved anybody, any person, it's like that love, that same love given to what created the love. It's just that we're so small in relationship to even the earth. I mean, even between here and Montreal, we can't even see that little distance, right? But like the whole earth and then the whole solar system and the cosmos, it's like we're in a living miracle, and having the miracle of the body. It's not just for our own satisfaction. Like, that's the Maya part. That's the illusion. So what else could it be? And having someone like Swami Radha, it's like, yeah, it's the divine in all these different forms. Like, call it a different name if you want, but it's something beyond our limitation. Call it the Creator, call it Allah, call it Jesus, call it Divine Mother, Krishna, whatever form that you can relate to, because even that form is a form and it's not that. So yeah, I like to think of consciousness, and I think my development has been, I think with Swami Radha leaving her body, I'm so aware of invisibility, like invisible presence, like the consciousness, the light within myself. And so my practice is really to invite in the light, to be more porous, to feel that connection that's not form. And I mean, I think that's what Krishna is, and why he would disappear is because he wasn't really that form. He was only taking form to be recognized. And that's what the divine does for us. It took the form of Swami Radha so I could recognize her, could recognize the divine in her, right? It is a tricky, trickster thing.
Wow. I'm getting a little teary, and now I don't know how to continue with this. That was very beautiful. And as you were kind of speaking about how small we are and how difficult it is for us to understand even the distance between BC and Quebec right now as we speak, I had these words of Swami Radha's from one of her poems, and I'm probably not going to say it properly, but something along the lines of, I am smaller than a grain of sand or a star in the universe.
I think you said it well. I remember that line.
And so just that process of remembering that and being able to kind of turn every action into an offering and filling our hearts with devotion, and what a wonderful path that can be.
Mm-hmm. I think it is a path that leads to knowledge, but instead of entering through the intellect and just being philosophical, when you enter through the heart, then you have like this tangible experience. And then the knowledge is yours. The knowledge is real for you rather than simply a mental construct. I remember Swami Radha saying about Gurudev Shivananda, he said, and I remember her telling this story, and she would always tell it with a lot of emphasis. She would say, it's difficult to be a bhakta, like the devotional person. She said, it's very difficult. She said this to me, it's very difficult to have those true and pure feelings. And she said, Gurudev used to say to me, look down there, see down by the Ganges, those scholars talking to each other, those pandits, they've been there the last 10 years, arguing over the same thing, and they'll be there in 10 years. He said to her, you, Radha, go and do. So put it into action, not just talk about it.
Act.
Yeah. bring your devotion in.
Well, I can say for certain that Swami Radha has been very present for me in our conversation together today. And I'm so grateful that you've sort of taken this time to speak about these things and to kind of share these very precious memories with her and of your kind of journey on this path of devotion.
Well, I really thank you because I've entered into some really special memories. And without this incentive, I might not have gone there. And when I was reviewing some of my times with her, I just started weeping away, feeling like missing her too. Missing the tangible, the human, missing the tangible. So yeah, it's been really special, Katie. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I wondered to end if you had kind of a prayer that you wanted to say together, because I know I was so excited to start speaking with you that I completely forgot at the beginning. So to end off with some special words.
Okay, let's do the Divine Mother prayer. O Divine Mother, may all my speech and idle talk be mantra. All actions of my hands be mudra. All eating and drinking be the offering of oblations unto thee. All lying down prostrations before thee. May all pleasures be as dedicating my entire self unto thee. And may everything I do be taken as thy worship, O Divine Mother.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode. Yasodhara Ashram is located on the unceded traditional territory of the Tanaha and Sinixt peoples. You can learn more about the ashram by visiting our website at yasodhara.org. You can also follow us on Instagram and YouTube. Until next time, I'm Katie Taher, and this is My Time with Radha.